MCP has a reputation problem. People say it's overhyped, wastes context, is painful to set up, and just doesn't work reliably. So I asked someone who literally helps build MCP at Amplitude and uses it in his own PM workflow every day to respond to every single one of those criticisms. His answer was more nuanced than I expected, and there are two specific mistakes he says almost everyone makes that cause most of the pain. What is the biggest mistake people make when using MCP?
I think there's two big ones. One is just kind of the wrong expectation settings for MCP. Sometimes people think that MCPs can do everything. Just the simplest way to think about it is MCPs are easy ways for your AI to interact with external systems. They're not complex ways to do workflows. They're not complex tasks already. Like there's a bunch of other tools more relevant for that. But just setting the expectation of just being able to pull in data is the first step. I think the second problem is sometimes people get excited and they connect a bunch of MCP servers, some have a lot of tools, some that are just totally irrelevant to a given workflow or that in that repo. And so this comes back to the problem with MCP, where if you have a huge amount of MCPs connected, too many tools that are not being used, all of those descriptions about what tools are available, what descriptions they are, what formats are needed, they start being provided as context to the model on a bunch of different queries that might not be relevant. And so that might lead to higher latency on a given response or slightly skewed or like inconsistent responses because the agent is thinking about these tools even though it's not relevant to the task at hand. So just be thoughtful about when you decide to incorporate an MCP tool. For stuff that's not as relevant, you can hide or remove those tools typically within Cursor, Claude Code, etc. Like you can remove stuff. And then if you're actively developing yourself, you also need to optimize on what is the right set of tools that you want to make available in your MCP server. What are those things named? And then making sure that there's not ambiguity for the model on which tool to use, and there's like accurate descriptors and accurate like instructions on what formatting is required depending on what you're using it for.
What you just said there, these breaking the fourth wall, behind the curtain insights of what it's like to be an MCPM have been one of my favorite parts of this conversation. So I think you're uniquely qualified to answer this question, which is that people say MCP is an unreliable or a bad standard. What do you say to that?
All right, I came prepared. It's a slide. So I see a bunch of things related to MCP. One, people just have been overhyped about what MCP can do. The second is MCPs waste a lot of context. The third is there's a lot of painful experiences on how people like set up or have to deal with authentication when interacting with MCPs. And then lastly, and probably the most important thing, is pretty complicated on how to actually configure an MCP. So those are the four criticisms I see most frequently. And so I think the main response is set the right expectations for yourself on like what MCP is used for. It is by far the easiest way to connect like external systems with most of the AI clients that you're using. And instead of like as a PM, I have to pull forward this huge roadmap of integrations and spend a lot of engineering resources building them out. Most like AI native tools at this point are exposing a lot of their tools, data, and actions via MCP. By far the easiest way to get started. Second piece is MCPs required like some amount of optimization. Like you need to go back and forth on what is the right set of tools you want to make available in your server. You need to optimize the names of them, like data sets or actions you make available. And then whenever you're finding edge cases, it's similar to some of the eval-driven development that you see for agents. Once you find those edge cases, figure out how you can optimize the tool names, the descriptors. And once you come to the right set of tools, those servers and those integrations like work very seamlessly and like kind of power a huge amount of these like complex workflows. I think the last thing is most of these like AI clients, Claude, ChatGPT, like Cursor, everybody's all converged around like the same standard on MCP now. Like it's the standard. Most people have some type of managed connector flow where instead of having to deal with this like manual URL setting that is in like the first version of these tools, you can just click one button and like those MCPs are set up for you, assuming you're logged into the right tool that you're trying to connect to. Auth is handled. So now that it's the native standard and everyone's converging on like the same like standard, it's actually pretty seamless to get started now. And then lastly, there's been a lot of this criticism about like context rot when there's a huge amount of tools. Within the last month and a half, that's actually dramatically changed depending on the AI clients. There's like pioneers like Cursor, they've done some experiments around like dynamic tool calling. So instead of having the tools all called every single time, they actually like use RAG to find like the right set of tools to call given a natural language question. So you're not using all of your context all the time. Same within Claude, like they've adopted some type of similar standard for not using like all of your context across these tools. And then that's also one of the reasons why they built skills.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Pendo, the leading software experience management platform. McKinsey found that 78% of companies are using GenAI, but just as many have reported no bottom line improvements. So how do you know if your AI agents are actually working? Are they giving users the wrong answers, creating more work instead of less, improving retention, or hurting it? When your software data and AI data are disconnected, you can't answer these questions. But when you bring all your usage data together in one place, you can see what users do before, during, and after they use AI, showing you when agents work, how they help you grow, and when to prioritize on your roadmap. Pendo Agent Analytics is the only solution built to do this for product teams. Start measuring your AI's performance with Agent Analytics at pendo.io/akash. That's pendo.io/AAKASH. I hope you enjoyed that short clip. You can check out the full episode here.